Yeah, so I recently had my mind blown. When I originally got on AI, my assumption was that eventually AI would help me update my WordPress sites, that it was going to do things within the confines of WordPress. What I quickly realized is that WordPress is just effed, and AI is just going to replace it. And that may seem like ridiculous or unfathomable, right? If you have ever done anything with using AI for any kind of development, you know that you've hit roadblocks. But the speed at which things are changing is so fast now that my whole perception of this has changed in the last 6 months. From I'm going to have AI help me as an agent, I'm going to have AI help me update my sites, and I'm going to have AI have access to a platform like Shopify or Webflow because it's all contained in one ecosystem. The problem with WordPress is it's very scattered. You have plugins created by a kid in his basement, by teams of people, people in different countries, and that has to jive with themes that are created in the same manner and architecture on hosts that are all done differently. Everything is very, very scattered and fragmented. And in order for AI to take control of things, everything has to be in one ecosystem, one vetted area, one thing. It can't be scattered. It can't have gateways and blocks. And there's just too much going on. There's too many moving parts in a WordPress website. So in my mind, that ecosystem is collapsing. And the new way is going to be what I'm about to show you, which is agentic AI and using prompts and screens and technical know-how to get a full-blown custom website built for a business. And that would include blogging capabilities, the ability to create mini applications that run right on your website. All of this is being created by just prompting, really, prompting and screen sharing. So to run an experiment, what I did was initially I have these two websites that I had to rebuild. Client doesn't really care if there's any visual changes whatsoever. So really it was an apples to apples WordPress migration. The intention was that it was going to go to Webflow, because Webflow would make it very easy to replicate, because you have full control over all the visuals and the designs. But I saw this thing called Replit on this roundtable podcast, in the Diary of a CEO roundtable, with a few people from the AI community, someone from OpenAI and someone from a company called Replit. And it was early on in my understanding of AI agents, and it didn't seem possible. Like I didn't believe it. So of course, like everything else, I went and tinkered and I tried. And I quickly realized that this is unbelievable, that I can just tell this AI to do something. Some things seemingly very simple would take hours of hand coding or hand manipulation, so to speak, making WordPress do stuff. In order to make WordPress do stuff, you have to have a full understanding of the plugin ecosystem, the theme, the architecture, the underlying code, hosting, you name it. There's like 100 things that can break or that need to be affected in order to get some things done within the WordPress environment. Very big pain in the ass, and it always has been. But it was the first program software that allowed people to really break free and do wild stuff, with websites. Back in the day when WordPress came out, this was like all this stuff had to be hand coded. So WordPress really saved a lot of time in establishing a database and establishing pages and posts and so on and so forth. So the basic CMS or content management system by default was available. But now all I have to do is type in a prompt that says I'm looking for a basic CMS with basic CMS capabilities. I want it to look like this. And I'm being very explicit with how I want it to look. I'm giving it fonts to choose from. I'm giving it explicit instructions for fonts to use as headings and as body text, colors, so on. And since I have a site that's already live, I can screenshot it and just say, basically, here, do this. And would you believe it? Replit went in and did this. And so the first site that I did was a very, very basic old site. One theme, one architecture, one kind of page layout. There's a sidebar with an image. The image changes when you go to a different page. The title changes when you go to a different page. All that's driven by a very basic call to the page title, a very basic call to the featured image. Each page is populated manually with text. The end of the story. There's a form, super simple. So that was going to be my first real test. Like, I'm not going to try to break the mold here. I'm not going to try to build a full-blown application. Although simultaneously I have been building an application, and is even the reason why I attempted this process of WordPress to Replit migration, because when building this application, and I'll reveal that probably in about a month, I could not believe what I was seeing. It was for the very first time that I realized that what's in my head is going to happen on the screen, and I don't have to hire a freelancer, developer, someone who knows X and X and X about WordPress, very specific nuances of all the slices of digital marketing. I could just have this thing handle it all. Now, intuitively, I'm able to work within the confines of like a brand guideline or establish a brand guideline. I'm a seasoned art director, web designer for a long time. So I understand the underlying architecture. I've worked with so many offshore developers and freelancers over the years. And in my mind, it's talking to Replit was exactly like talking to an offshore developer. Sometimes you'd say things explicitly and they'd get it right out of the gate. You're like, oh, great, we're on the same page. And then sometimes you give it explicit instructions and it goes effing crazy. It goes rogue. And you're like, well, why'd you do that? And like, why'd you break free and get creative? Like, don't do that. Unless I ask you to, please don't do that. So the AI will go nuts sometimes. And by nuts, I mean, it just spins in circles. And so you have to just say, all right, we got to stop this process. And we're gonna start a new conversation here, and we're gonna kind of reframe how we're asking for this. Because in most cases, really what it comes down to is how you're asking for things and its interpretation of it. So the more explicit and technical that you can be, the better results you're gonna get. But if you don't have any technical abilities at all and you don't really understand stuff, you can get something good enough. But in my mind, probably not much better than you'd get from using Squarespace or Wix or something like that. But you could do it. You can tinker around with it and get pretty far. But if you know a little bit, if you're a little bit technical and you understand the architecture of websites, web applications, you understand databases and how databases are called, and the front end separation and CSS and all the stuff that drives like a modern website, and you can build some really wild stuff on the cheap and fast, like real fast. The freelancer, especially an offshore one, there's always a time problem. There's always time zones are barriers, and language is often a barrier. It's very infrequent that I get someone who's speaking English, or full, like, native English as their first language. And so there's always a barrier or a problem. Meets and Zooms and all that stuff, they're happening at weird times, 6 hours off, 8 hours off. And you're lured in because you think, oh, I'm getting a good price. But in the end of the day, those freelancers are pretty terrible. And the price doesn't matter because you spend so much time spinning in a circle and then you waste days getting little things done. In the case of this agentic AI, or using an agent to build a website, turnaround time, even with the screw ups, is instantaneous. So like, they screw up, I'm like, oh, no, I can see that you just did this. Let's backpedal, let's roll back, and let's do it this way. And you can see the mistakes in real time. So you do have to man the ship, so to speak. You have to operate. You have to know and direct. You don't let it go rogue. If you let it go rogue, you're not going to get a desirable result at all. But if you know what you want and you can define it, you can use Perplexity or ChatGPT to help you craft prompts. So if you don't really know the technical lingo, you have to understand that this is a really technical tool being scaled back so that people can use it via a chat. So when I'm asking for something from a freelancer, there's all these assumptions that I know what they know, and I understand what they're capable of or they're not going to be capable of based on a skill set. But when you're working with agentic AI, specifically Replit, Lovable is another one that a friend and colleague shared with me, and I'm sure there's others already at this point. I just gravitated to Replit because it worked first time and the second time and the third time and the fourth time. And so I'm in, like I'm good with that. And so, if you have this technical understanding and you can prompt it and prompt it and prompt it and keep going over the littlest details, it's never going to tell you, no, I can't do that, or, this is too much, or that's going to be another 10 hours of work, or that's going to be 20 hours of work. It just goes and does the thing right in front of you. Like, I'm going to give you for instance. There was this one scenario in the website where I wanted recent posts from the blog to be on the right hand side, like the most old school layout. Left hand content, right hand side had recent blog posts. So that's after establishing the blog instantly. I wanted that when the user scrolled, I wanted that area to be, I wanted it to not move while the content did move, so that recent posts would stay stuck and the content itself would zoom by. In addition to that, when they were viewing a blog post, I wanted infinite loading on the blog post so that when they got to the bottom of the blog post, the next one would automatically load in place and they wouldn't have to hit a next button. They wouldn't have to go back to the blog home. They would just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, all while recent posts remained stuck at the top. Would you believe I prompted it to do that? And it output the whole operation. I got the whole thing done in like 35 minutes. So it screwed up a little bit, made some titles a little weird here and there, but it did it in like 35 minutes. And like, in all honesty, that if I had to ask a freelancer to go into this fresh WordPress installation and do those modifications, it would involve plugins and purchases and codes and licenses, and theme would have to be recreated for these things. Like, there'd be like 12 operations. It would take forever. And I've done this process before, so I can tell you exactly how long it would take. It sucks. And that was like so basic for this thing that it just spit it out and it was done. And I was already on to the next thing. I wanted a gradient to move a little bit, like a nice subtle gradient animation over the hero image on the home page. And would you believe I just said it and it just bam, done. All the little details, make this area, format it, make it look a little nicer, a little richer, so I don't have to go in and do colored bullet points and move things around, space things out. Like, I'm used to getting very granular and going into like every little inch and detail of a website and having full control over all of those things. So with that in mind, I'm using that mentality when I'm talking to this thing. So I'm being very precise with what I'm asking for, but I don't overload it. I don't give it 20 things at once. We do the thing, get it right, move on to the next thing. Be patient. So when you have to wait for it to do its thing and then eventually screw up and then you have to kind of reword it, there's downtime, right? So during the time that I'm waiting for this thing to do its thing, I can just work on another one, or I can develop creative images. So while I was doing this one build, I was creating images in Sora and just going back and forth. So Sora takes time to render out, do my thing over there, let it render out, go back to this thing. So I'm kind of flip-flopping, I'm multitasking, but I'm really just waiting for it to catch up. Eventually this is going to be instant and the screw ups and the limitations will be less and less. And I, as an individual, can control essentially an entire web development team, head to toe, programmer, visual designer, whatever, architect, like whatever needs to happen is all in this $20 a month. They say it's $25 a month, and that is not accurate because when you use their program, they charge you for certain things and it's a little ambiguous. But at the end of the day, I built 4 websites and I paid about $200 in overage fees for 4 websites. Like, if I had to hire a freelancer to fully replicate 4 WordPress sites and then also enhance them just enough, one of them enhanced a lot, and shake all of the plugins and all of the themes and all of the nonsense and all of the breaking and the WP engine and the security updates and all the bullshit. And it's all gone. All of it, except your little monthly hosting fee. And when you want something done, I want to add content. It's like you're talking to me, like you're talking to a person, add this. Okay. Strategically, know what you're asking for. Don't ask for things that are very vague. But if you're very specific about what you want, it's going to output for you exactly what you're trying to get done on the screen. So this is a defining moment. So I'm telling WordPress people right now that if you're just a WordPress person and like all you care about and worry about is WordPress stuff, that once people understand uh, that they can completely remove WordPress out of the equation and they're not going to lose any functionality whatsoever. And this is primarily for, I'll call them static websites, CMS websites, where you have a business, they blog and they edit some content, add some pictures. But for the most part, unless they need to add a section or something like that, it's pretty much a stagnant, static website that doesn't change that often. It's not a full blown web application with with things that are constantly moving, constantly updating, which is 99% of small business websites, medium sized small businesses, whatever you want to classify them as. Business websites are pretty stagnant and static. So you don't really have the considerations that like a corporation would have or like a giant e-commerce site would have. Like I would not recommend, at least yet, moving a giant e-commerce website into this ecosystem. This is still for the majority of the websites. So this is just small business websites that it's just able to handle all the problems, visually nail it, perfect, formatting's perfect, nothing's off. There was an error on like one of the aspects of the mobile website, and I was like, just go and fix that thing on mobile alone, and adjust the size of the little hamburger icon and make the navigation options a little bigger. Give me a little flair to it, and just done. Here's a photo. Here's a blurb. Here's text. Add a blog. Make sure that when you do add this blog, that sequentially the next one goes down, chronologically the next one goes down, wherever it may appear on recent posts, the homepage, so on and so forth, the blog main page. Add the blog, and the whole thing is just working. So you don't have to log into the website, go to the post page. Like everything in WordPress is like this slow crawl and this process. And it's just super annoying. But it was a great bridge from just high-end development and giving people the power to customize websites to kind of do whatever they want. But the scattered ecosystem, the security issues, the rising costs of development, the lack of quality help, all are going to lead to the demise of WordPress. Some people, some businesses will stick with it, especially ones who have massive custom websites or WooCommerce builds, and they don't want to go through the cost. When people have 1,000-page websites where every page is a custom thing, that's going to be a big process to migrate. But for the most part, most businesses have 30 blog posts and 12 information pages and a nice robust homepage, a call to action, a form, header, footer, mobile version, and then all the connections out to SEO, local SEO, Bing, Google, whatever. Most businesses have the same recipe. This thing is able to accommodate that with not ease, but like it's such a pleasure to work in this way, instead of the old way of manual placement of every single little thing. Even still to this day, right now, there are going to be companies that will resist this. I had a client that I showed it to, and she was like, nope, I don't want AI doing it. I want you to do it. I want it to be HI. They want human intelligence, not AI. So there will be pushback, but most people won't care. As long as their site's up and running and their pertinent information is available, then it's going to be just fine. So the one that I've chosen to use is Replit. An example of this work is barthinsurance.com, which you can get that link below. It's my first one that I want to showcase because it's just like the first like real business, with a minor visual upgrade from what it was on WordPress. And you can see the artifacts of WordPress. You can just see visually for a local small insurance agent website that it looks very good. Okay, like really good, and it's unbelievable what a joy it was to make that. And so now from this point forth, there's the technical stuff that has to happen. But what I realized quickly is that this is a technical application. So it's not like pulling teeth when I have to get this stuff done. It's like, okay, no problem. Like the answer to all my requests when I'm using AI, okay, no problem. Even if it's bullshitting me, which it does sometimes. I had a couple issues with DNS propagation and getting the website over, but not that big of a deal. And so, for the time that I spent learning and building, it was exponentially faster than if I had to build it any of the old ways. I will never, ever recommend starting from scratch on WordPress from this point forth. It's not even an option in my mind. My advice to everyone right now is don't be married to the tool that you're using um, for anything. That includes Photoshop, Premiere, it includes ChatGPT, it includes WordPress, Webflow, because as time proceeds on, there's going to be an AI replacement for it. And unless you learn this AI stuff and not fear it, you're going to get replaced by it probably. If you're in any kind of button pushing position, and you rely solely on a piece of software for your job, like if you're an After Effects artist, or if you're a video editor, or if you're a graphic designer who relies on the Adobe suite, if you're a web developer and you rely on XX and X languages, if you rely on WordPress, um, it's all going to be enveloped by some form of agentic AI or using an AI agent. I think that eventually agents may be able to go in and update and fix your WordPress site, but I think the ecosystem's so flawed and so broken that it's going to be just as many issues then. So at the end of the day, you're still going to want to jump ship to at least Webflow or Shopify, where AI is becoming infused every day into this ecosystem. And everything's vetted. All the plugins are vetted and approved by Shopify or Webflow. So those two ecosystems are spot on, but they're still very hands-on. They're still very, you're gonna do all the work and you have to find the buttons to push. And I think maybe that's the big difference with Replit or Agentic AI, Lovable, or whatever other ones pop up soon, is that you don't have to be like hands-on micromanage. Half the problem is just not knowing where things are with most software, right? So this takes the guesswork out and it lets you just use your skill set. So if you're a creative person and you've always been held back by the technology that you're using, which is exactly me, being held back by the technology, my limited abilities with certain things. And so with those limitations, I always kind of would compromise and do things a certain way just so I could get it done sufficiently. But if I could do it a different way, a more expensive and grand way, well, of course I would opt to do that. So this is exactly what this is going to allow me to do, is develop things that I could just never develop before, and make things that I could never make before. So the creativity is still there. The skill set is still the same. I'm just adding in new tools. So that's it. Like if you think about it like that, you're adding new tools and you're taking away old tools, things that are outdated. Okay, it would be the same for a car or a carpenter, or any other industry where kind of technology has provided a better tool for the job. Whatever it is, these are better tools for the job, and it's never going to go backwards. So WordPress is entirely cooked. I'm going to do my next video outlining exactly the details of why that is. I was working with WordPress since its very first version, um, and I have evolved with it and grown with it, and I've built 100 plus websites on it, migrated 100 plus websites over to WP Engine. I currently still manage about 25, 30 of them on WP Engine of all different sizes, one pagers up to 2,000 page websites, e-commerce sites, you name it. But AI technology is definitely going to replace that soon. And what's going to happen to those old sites is, as they have been, abandoned and left for updates to happen. And then all the complications just become too much. And then no one's going to care. All the talent is going to leave because it's just not going to pay anymore. You're going to be stuck with people who are very low budget, and it's going to just end up ruining whatever you have established. So my advice would be, as soon as you can, jump ship to AI via Replit, which is still pretty beta, pretty brand new, and Webflow. Webflow is infusing AI into their builds. And so it's not like I can prompt to get things done in Webflow. However, it is offering me the ability to use AI to come up with instant layouts and animations, and it adheres to the branding that it's established. And it's definitely more intelligent than doing all of that stuff from scratch. like I've been doing for years and years and years. I'm in my 25th year, and they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I'd say in the last 2 years, I've learned more new tricks than 10 years prior when I was stuck in WordPress land and working with small business websites and updating them and fixing them and all that good stuff. So this is a very exciting time if you're open to new paths, if you're open to learning new things and hearing new things and undoing processes and systems that you've got established. And you're not going to fear those processes that are brand new, and just jump into it because it's wild. It's the Wild West. And so that's it. That's my overview. I hope as I spoke, you could see what I was doing while I was building. This is an example of 3 websites in a row that I took from WordPress, from WP Engine, and replaced completely on Replit for a single monthly small fee and none of the drama. None of it. None of it comes for the ride. So Replit, Webflow, Shopify, just do yourself a favor and get WordPress out of your life sooner than later because it's crumbling quickly. So hopefully that shed some really cool insight. I'm going to be doing some in-depth builds of features and how I go about asking to get these things done, and how I go about as a professional web designer talking to basically a new set of freelancers. It's like I just got armed with 10 freelancers that I have at my disposal for whatever I need them to do. That's how I'm looking at it. That's how it feels to me. And it's very liberating. So if you're a WordPress person, listen to me, man. 2025, it's July 1st, 2025. You're hearing this information right now, get on it. Try going to Replit right now with a screenshot of any one of your sites that you've hosted, and ask Replit to help you build this thing out, and just go from there. And if nothing else, just give it some serious consideration and thought, because it's wild, man. All right? Good luck.